Hey guys, today we're servicing this RockShox Judy XC. This video will apply to any 95 or 96 Judy, whether it's an XC or an SL. Even if you have a DH, this video will also apply, but I'll get to that later. Now I like to hoist up my forks on a bike stand, or you can just leave it on your bike. To take apart this Judy, some tools you're going to need are a hammer, an adjustable wrench or a regular one, some pliers, a pick, and a hex set. Alright, so first thing you want to do is grab these red adjuster knobs and turn them all the way outwards. When you unscrew them, this releases the pressure and the springs from the fork, so it'll be easier to take off. Alright, next thing you want to do is grab the black part and unscrew that. You can use a plier if you want, just be careful to not damage these as much. Alright, so when you do unscrew the cap, you will see a stack of elastomers. Now, we were very lucky in this situation to have these still alive. These usually degrade after about 10-15 years in a fork. And if you don't have elastomers in there, you probably have a pair of springs, which is even better. Those are called speed springs, and they don't degrade like elastomers do. Alright, so now we're just going to do the same thing to the other side. Alright, so if you unscrew the caps and you see a bunch of gray dust, that's just the elastomers completely gone. You're going to have to fish it out and clean it out later, which is a pain in the ass. Alright, now moving on to the arch, we're just going to crack open these two 3mm bolts and take out these two brake bosses. Alright, so when you're unscrewing the last bolt, remember just hold the arch so it doesn't fall off. And then it should just pop right off. There you go. Now with the arch out of the way, you can take apart the dampers, and I'll show you how to realize which side is the damper and which side is just a dummy rod. So what you gotta do is just grab one of the lowers and move it up and down. You see this one is pretty hard to move. It's really smooth and takes a long time to rebound. This one, on the other hand, goes up and down a lot smoother. So we know this is the dummy side and this is the side with the oil cartridge. Now, as I said at the start of the video, this also applies to the RockShox Judy DH, and on a DH you have two oil dampers, so both sides have an oil damper in it. Alright, so first, when disconnecting the damper side, it's a good idea to just put down a bin just in case the oil cartridge is blown and it's going to leak oil everywhere. So get out your 5mm Allen wrench and unscrew that little bolt. Now remember, if you could not get that bolt loose easily, you can always just put the arch back on. Now you want to screw it back in just a little bit, like 2 or 3 threads. Grab your rubber mallet, and we're just going to hit that to disconnect the damper rod from the lower so we can take apart the fork and service it. So you see that came off really easily. Sometimes it doesn't do that, so just keep hammering it until it comes off, and I really recommend one of these bolts if it's stuck on so you don't damage the lower. Alright, so once the rod is disconnected, just grab the lower and pull it off. Alright, with the lower off, just pull the boot off to get it out of the way. Alright, here I recommend to just take out the entire stanchion. It'll be a lot easier to service the oil damper if we have it taken out. Alright, so get out your 5mm Allen key and loosen the bolts. Alright, with the bolts loose, just grab the stanchion with your hand and go back and forth and pull it out. Alright, something not to do is do not hammer it from the top, because that's going to damage the crown or the stanchions and it's really risky. Alright, so get out some gloves, grab it with 2 hands and start getting it out. Stanchion's out and this fork is now a lefty. Okay, but seriously, we gotta take out this clip now. Alright, So to take out this clip, of course, you're going to need C-clip pliers. But if you're like me and you don't have them, you can use a pair of these. So what you do is you put them in the two little holes. If you have pliers that go this small, and then you push in and pull it out. Alright, so after you get the clip off, there's going to be this little tiny washer, so just get it and take it off. Now a lot of Judys came with plastic cartridges, which are the stock ones, and a lot of people upgraded them to aluminum racing ones. So this is a big reveal to find out if you have one of those or not. Alright, so this one has nothing on it, so that means it's a stock plastic cartridge, but it's fine because it still works. Alright, so when you do get your cartridge out, you want to make sure it functions well, and here are some ways you can see if it does. So when you grab it and move it, you want to make sure it moves smoothly without any sudden, movements. Just nice and smooth. You want to make sure there's no significant dirt on the seals. Now if your cartridge is blown and there's oil leaking out of it, you probably want to replace the seals, which is why a company called SRP makes a specific kit for these cartridges, and the link will be in the description. And it's pretty straightforward. They have a manual that comes with it. So you just take apart the cartridge, take apart the clip, refill it with oil, put on the new seals, and you're good to go. Now if you opened up your stanchion and found this, an aluminum hard body cartridge, these came often on these Judys because the plastic ones developed a little bit of flex in them, and these were just a better alternative. But you can still service them, and usually for these companies you have to send it back to them because the seals are different. It might be tough if the company is not around anymore. For example, White Brothers. Now, Ricci Racing is actually still around. You can actually send it to them. I will be sending this over to them when I have the chance. But yeah, just do the research for the company that you have. Alright, now that one stanchion is fully taken apart, now it's time to move on to the other one. And if you have a Judy DH, you have the same thing on both sides, so you can just go ahead and skip this. Alright, so this side should move a lot smoother, unless you have a tragic elastomer genocide, but yeah, just time to pull off that little clip there. Alright, so if the shaft moves really smoothly, as it already does, you don't even have to take it out. You're just going to wipe it off and re-grease it later. Alright, so this is the fork almost completely taken apart. Alright, so now I want to talk about replacing components. First thing to look at is the seals in the stanchion. So what you do is just look at them. If you see any imperfections, if you see any dirt on the stanchions when you take it off, that could be a sign that your seals are bad. So yeah, inspect your seals, make sure there's no imperfections, and I will have a link to some new ones in the description. And if your elastomers are turned to dust, you can get new ones from suspensionforkparts.com. It's a really great website. They have so many elastomers on there. So grateful for them to recreate and let these forks, live again. Or you could put in speed springs, which are a little bit more expensive. They can be a little heavier, but they're not going to degrade like elastomers do. And on top of that, you could also probably find a pair of boots if yours are cracked and letting in dirt. Alright, with everything apart, now let's talk about cleaning. Some things you're going to need are alcohol, a toothbrush, and a lot of paper towels. Also, before you start cleaning the internals, lay out a paper towel or something, so when you get them clean, they stay clean until you put it back together. Alright, so starting off with the stanchions, what you just want to do is clean the outside with some alcohol, and make sure to also clean the seals. As you see here, there's a little bit of oil on the stanchion. not much dirt, so just run a paper towel through there a couple times and you should be good. Alright, so here's the stanchion all cleaned off. I also gave it a quick wax to prevent corrosion. And here are the seals. Alright, moving on to the elastomer towers. You don't have to clean the grease off if there's a lot there. There's no point in wasting even more grease putting it on. And just clean off the top caps. Make sure to check for any dirt or large debris, otherwise just add some more grease or just keep what's on there. Alright, for the boots, all you need is just some soapy water and a toothbrush and just go to town, you know. If your oil cartridge works, just clean off any dirt, and if it doesn't, just rebuild it. Alright, same thing for the arch, just clean it off with some alcohol and you'll be good. Alright, here's the arch all cleaned off, and I also gave it a quick wax. Alright, for the hardware, just clean off the clips and soak the bolts in vinegar or use an ultrasonic cleaner. You could also use some degreaser, but the main objective here is to get the threads clean. Alright, here's all the bolts nice and cleaned off. Alright, for the stanchion, clean the outside thoroughly with some alcohol, and for the inside, just get rid of all the dirt. The inside, you can clean it off with a paper towel or with one of those really expensive fork brushes like I have here. The dummy damper side, only clean the inside if your rod moves smoothly like this. Otherwise, just clean the top part and don't really worry about this. Just clean off the end and re-lube it with some grease. Alright, now onto the crown. Don't forget to clean all the dirt off, and don't forget about the crown race. Alright, now the crown is clean and it's time to do some sanding. Alright, and for polishing, I like to hoist the crown up on a bike stand. This crown is actually not that corroded, so I'm just going to go ahead and start off with some 1000 grit. Alright, with all your parts nice and shiny and dust free, now it's time to assemble. Alright, with the crown and the stand, we're just going to insert the stanchions now. So what I'm going to do is just put the dummy rod side on the non-drive side of the bike. So here it would be on the left, on this side. All that does is just give the bike a little bit more balance to have the heavier damper on the non-drive side of the bike. And just insert them until they're just about flush with the crown. Alright, and same thing for the damper side. Alright, so the stanchions are in the crown already pretty tight, but I like to add a little bit of thread locker to the bolts when putting them in. Alright, so after you just tighten down the bolts a little bit, and you want to make sure they're snug, and do this evenly on both sides. Alright, so tighten the bolts little by little in pairs and make sure they're snug, nothing too crazy. Alright, so put in your dummy damper side if you haven't already, and make sure it just moves nice and smooth. Like that. Alright, so to grease up the metal part inside of that dummy damper, I would use some bearing grease or just some general purpose grease. It works, but for the shaft itself, which has a seal on it, I like to use this Slick Honey grease. It's made specifically for O-rings and seals. Alright, so to put in the clip, I like to hold one side back into the stanchion, And the other side I just grab with some pliers. And the other side I just grab with some pliers and push it in. This is a pretty hard procedure, it takes some time, but you just gotta push hard in, pop it in. Alright, with that side done, now for the damper side, grease up the little yellow thing at the top, make sure this is a little bit greased up, and make sure you have the cone there too, and then go ahead and insert it. Alright, for this side, very similar thing, except now we have that little cone there. Make sure it's seated onto the damper, and then slide on this little washer. Also, what helps is pushing the damper all the way up so you have a little bit more room to move. And same thing as last time, just push the clip in. Alright, so when the clip is in, I'm just going to grease up the shaft with a little bit of this honey. Alright, now it's time for the lowers, but before we do that, make sure to clean off the stanchions with some alcohol. Make sure they are spotless. As you see here, we got a lot of dirt off, so yeah, make sure to clean those off real good. Alright, now I'm going to apply some of that special seal fork grease to the wipers. Alright, now just slide on the boots. Alright, so after you greased up the stanchions as well, insert the lowers. Alright, before we put the arch on, there's a bigger task at hand, and that's seating the boots onto the lowers. So the objective is to pull this rubber part all the way around into this groove so it seats there and stays and keeps out all the dirt. Alright, so you may have noticed these three little holes, and you want to position them outwards because dirt accumulates on the inside of the arch where the brakes are. So to put the boot around the lower, just grab it with your hands and kind of fiddle with it. Make sure not to rip it or cause any damage. But yeah, this usually takes a while. You just gotta fiddle with it and be patient. Alright, so the boots went on pretty easily, and this is what they look like when seated properly. Alright, so now just screw in the damper rods into the lowers, and the bolt with the little hole goes on the damper side. Alright, so again, you want these snug but not crazy tight. Alright, for the arch bolts, same thing as the one for the stanchion. Just put some Loctite on the brake bosses and the other 3mm. And this time I actually do have an 8mm wrench. I can already see everyone flaming me in the comments for using an adjustable one, so yeah, here you go. Also, you want to make sure to tighten the bolts evenly on both sides in small increments because the arch is magnesium and it's very fragile. Alright, and the final step, just grease up and insert your elastomers. And to adjust this thing, it's really simple. Turn them in to make it harder and turn them out to make it softer. I usually like to turn both the red caps at the same spot, so I usually use these little lines to line it up. Alright, and after that, you got yourself a fully rebuilt 95 RockShox Judy XC. So remember guys, make sure to maintain your old forks and don't store them up in your garage or the elastomers will degrade. Don't be afraid to use those older parts, so subscribe so you won't miss another rebuild, and I'll see you in the next one.